Hi guys, I'm really excited to talk about the steps for the U.S. entering the war. Last class we watched the shell shock video, so I want to just give you the a couple steps that I think was missing from the last video. So you have the notes, and you notice that they are arranged by stairs. So when you take these notes, each slide will match a step of the stairs or a side thing, and I'll go through with it. So if you look, your first stair is World War I begins. That's the bottom stairs. And we know that that began with Archduke Franz Ferdinand's shot in Sarajevo and then the events that led to it. So our next event happens in 1915. Germany begins unrestricted subwarfare. So what that means is it does not matter if you are a merchant ship, a passenger ship, a battleship. If a German sub sees you, they are going to attack you. That includes ships that from neutral countries. And remember, in 1915, the United States was a neutral country. Woodrow Wilson is trying to keep America out of the war. In May 7th, 1915 is an important date. That's where we saw in the video the Lusitania was sunk by a German U-boat. This is a step to America's entering the war, but it does not get America into the war. This is where I mentioned in last class, this is where U.S. public opinion will shrink from split between allies and central powers. Once Germany sinks the Lusitania, the Americans are going to see them as the bad guys in the war. Couple facts to put by the side is to remember that it's a passenger ship. Even though it is a British ship, 128 Americans died. Woodrow Wilson at this point is facing intense pressure to enter the war. He tells the German Kaiser, remember Kaiser Wilhelm runs Germany, he tells them, you either stop sinking these ships unrestricted subwarfare or the U.S. will be forced to enter the war. In 1915, Germany does not want to be facing Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Japan, and the United States. Well, some of those will come in later. Italy, in particular, isn't coming in until 1916. But he does not want to have to fight the U.S. too. So he agrees that he will end unrestricted subwarfare. So neutral ships that approach the British coast will be okay. So what ends up happening between 1915 and 1917? So in 1915, the German Kaiser ends unrestricted subwarfare. Going on the Eastern Front, Russia is beginning to collapse. Germany wants to force Britain out of the war so that it would only have to battle France. They figure they can do it if they can cut off the supplies to Britain. So Germany puts a blockade and resumes unrestricted subwarfare. So what they're doing is there's any ship that approaches the British coast, and remember at this time that includes Britain and Ireland, they will shoot them down. They are targets for unrestricted subwarfare. It could be naval ships, it could be passenger ships, it could be merchant ships, anything that approaches the British coast. And remember, you have American merchant ships because America's economy is booming with trade with the Allies during the war. Germany will sink American ships. It just happens. They sink 4 American ships. Wilson still is not going to get involved in the war until what ends up happening is the Zimmermann telegram gets published in U.S. papers. Arthur Zimmermann was a German diplomat, and what he did is he sent a correspondence, a telegram to Mexico, and he told Mexico that if they would declare war on the U.S., the Germans would support them in their war, and they would support them especially because remember the Mexico-American War where Arizona, California, New Mexico, the U.S. got that territory from Mexico, the Germans would help them get that back. That angers the U.S. but it does not. It's published in the paper, which is going to force Woodrow Wilson to move on the war. The U.S. is very upset about it. The U.S. does not get the document directly. The British intercept and find this telegram, and they publish it in the U.S. papers. So Wilson has to deal with the anger over the sinking of the U.S. ships and the anger over the Zimmerman telegram. So on April 2nd, 1917, the U.S. enters the war. A couple things. Lusitania, remember, happens in 1915. It is a step. Woodrow Wilson is the president. Remember, if the Allied powers lose, the United States has a big economic stake. The U.S. banks had lent tons of money to Germany, especially, but I'm sorry, to the Allied powers. So the U.S. has sent a lot of money to Britain and France. Britain and France has also purchased a lot of equipment. So at that point, what's going on at the same time that America is getting involved, Russia is collapsing. The ruler of Russia was Tsar Nicholas II. He is the last Romanov ruler of Russia. What is going to happen is he is going to be overthrown, and we're going to talk about this later on. The Russian Tsar is overthrown in the February Revolution. Then you have the provisional government, which decides to stay in the war, like they said, and eventually the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, will lead the communists into power, or the Bolsheviks into power. In March 1918, Russia officially withdraws from the war with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Brest-Litovsk, it will cost Russia a very, very high cost. They're going to lose 1/6 of their population. They lose a lot of land. One of the things the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk shows is whoever loses this war will pay a high punishment. So while Russia left the war, it does not help the Germans because the U.S. comes into the war. The Central Powers, remember, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire are the big ones. When Russia withdraws, Germany is able to move, as you saw, move all the troops. They come within to 30 or 40 miles. The Americans come in. At the same time that Germany is had that last great push where they literally just collapse. The Ottoman Turks have surrendered. Austria-Hungary is in the middle of a revolution, overthrowing. So on November 9th, the people of Germany, the German leadership, the German generals, have Kaiser Wilhelm abdicate because Woodrow Wilson said, the Allied powers, one of the conditions of the surrender was they wanted the monarchy in Germany gone. Remember, Woodrow Wilson wants to bring democracy. November 11th, 1918, the armistice signed. The armistice, the only thing the armistice does is it is agreement to stop fighting. The results of the war, remember we talked about it. This was an industrial war. This involved over 60 countries because it was not just the European powers, they involved their colonies. You had mass destruction. Civilians are dying from disease, starvation, slaughter. There's going to be a huge flu epidemic in 1918. The amount of money that was used on this war, Europe is going to be unstable. You're going to have your first communist revolution, which will happen in Russia, and that will set some tones for some things that are going to happen in the 1920s, then leading to World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, we're going to talk about, is going to anger and lead to the next war. You are going to get new nations created. This is where you get Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. So we're going to see those next class. And the Europeans, so those who lose their empires, but the European powers who won will try and keep their powers, which is going to be another cause of World War II. Thank you.